My stepmom didn't ask for money. She whispered a threat. Give me access to your credit card, or I'll ruin your reputation. Not a joke, not a misunderstanding, a calculation. Apparently, if I didn't cooperate, I was about to become unstable, irresponsible, financially reckless, whatever story she needed to sell. She thought I'd panic. She didn't realize I already had screenshots of her cheating, and blackmail only works if you're the only one holding secrets. She didn't say it loudly. That's what made it worse. It happened in my dad's kitchen, the place that still smells like lemon cleaner and old coffee, the place that's supposed to feel safe because it's where I learned how to stir pasta sauce and steal cookie dough when no one was looking. My stepmom waited until my dad stepped outside to take a phone call. The second the back door shut, she moved closer, like she'd been rehearsing the distance. Her voice dropped into a whisper that was almost intimate. Almost. Give me access to your credit card, she said, smiling like she was offering advice, or I'll ruin your reputation. I froze with a glass in my hand. Water sloshed over my fingers, and I didn't even feel it. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, because normal people don't say that. Normal people ask for help. Normal people get embarrassed when money comes up. My stepmom didn't even blink. She tilted her head, watching me like she was studying how quickly fear would show. You heard me, she continued softly. I'm tired of you acting like you're above this family. Above. That word again. The favorite weapon of people who confuse boundaries with arrogance. I don't understand what you're saying, I managed, even though I understood perfectly. She smiled wider. You do, she said. You just don't want to. My throat felt tight. This wasn't an argument. There was no room in her tone for negotiation, only compliance. I forced myself to breathe in slowly through my nose like I was trying to calm a panicking animal. Why would I give you access to my credit card? I asked. She shrugged slightly, like the answer was obvious. Because you have it, she said, and we need it. We. Always we when it was my resources, never we when it was my stress. What do you mean, need it? I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the back door, checking if my dad was coming in. Then she leaned closer. Don't play innocent, she whispered. You know your father is under pressure. He doesn't need extra drama. I can make your life complicated. My spine went cold. Complicated how? I asked. She watched my face for a beat, almost enjoying it. You work with people, she said softly. You have a reputation. I felt my stomach twist. In a small town, you don't need proof to ruin someone. You just need a story that sounds plausible enough to repeat. My stepmom continued like she was reading from a menu. I can mention how you've been struggling lately, she said. How you've been unstable. How you've had issues. I swallowed. What issues? I asked. She tapped the counter gently with one finger. You tell me, she said, smiling. Debt, substance, relationships. I can make anything sound like concern. Concern? The prettiest disguise for cruelty. I stared at her, and the memories started snapping together in my head like magnets finding their match. The way she'd always asked questions that weren't questions. How much do you make now? You're saving a lot, aren't you? You don't want people thinking you're selfish. You know, some women your age get desperate. Your dad worries about you. She'd been laying tracks for this for years. I had just assumed it was nosiness. It wasn't. It was infrastructure. I'm not giving you my credit card, I said quietly. Her smile didn't fade. It sharpened. Sweetheart, she said, still whispering, you don't really get to say no. My hands started to shake. I set the glass down hard enough that it clinked against the counter. My stepmom's eyes followed the movement, calm and predatory. I'm going to tell Dad, I said. She laughed under her breath. Tell him what? She asked. That I asked for help? That you're being dramatic? He already thinks you overreact. My pulse spiked. Because she was right about one thing. My dad hated conflict. He was the kind of man who would rather pretend a crack in the wall didn't exist than admit the foundation was shifting. He didn't like choosing sides. And my stepmom had spent years making sure he believed she was the reasonable one, and I was the emotional one. Why are you doing this? I asked, and my voice cracked in a way I hated. She looked almost offended, like the question itself was insulting. "Because you owe," she said, "and because I'm tired of you acting like you're better." I didn't owe her anything, but I'd spent years paying in small ways, biting my tongue, smiling through her jabs, showing up to holidays where she corrected me in front of relatives, letting her call me sensitive, letting her frame my boundaries as attitude. I heard the back door open, my dad's boots on the floor. My stepmom stepped back instantly, her expression rearranging itself into warmth, like flipping a switch. There it was, the performance face. Dad walked in, still holding his phone. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yes," my stepmom said immediately, bright and sweet. "We were just talking about you." I looked at my dad. He looked tired, the way he'd looked for years, like he'd made peace with exhaustion. I wanted to say it, right then, tell him what she'd just done. But my brain hesitated because I could already picture the outcome. He'd frown, he'd sigh, he'd say, "She didn't mean it like that." He'd say, "Can we not do this right now?" He'd ask me to be the bigger person. That hesitation made me hate myself for a second, because silence is what blackmail feeds on. My stepmom brushed my shoulder as she walked past, close enough for only me to hear. "Think about it," she whispered, "before you make a mistake." Then she left the kitchen, humming, like she hadn't just threatened to destroy me. I stood there, staring at the spot where she'd been, my skin buzzing with adrenaline and disgust. My dad asked again, softer, "Hey, are you okay?" I forced a smile that felt like swallowing glass. "I'm fine," I lied. And the second the word left my mouth, I knew two things. One, she was going to escalate. Two, I needed proof. Because if I tried to fight her with emotions, she'd win. So I was going to fight her with receipts. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again. "Give me access, or I'll ruin your reputation." It wasn't the threat itself that kept replaying. It was how calm she'd been, how certain, like she'd already rehearsed the outcome. The next morning, I did something I should have done years ago. I locked everything down. New passwords, two-factor authentication on every account, credit freeze, bank alerts for transactions over $10, removed any emergency contact that wasn't absolutely necessary. I checked my credit report twice, then 3 times. Then I sat there staring at the screen like I was waiting for some hidden line item to appear with her name on it. There wasn't. But that didn't make me feel safe. It made me feel like she was planning something bigger. By lunchtime, the first ripple hit. A text from my aunt, Aunt Karen. "Hey, sweetheart, your stepmom mentioned you've been going through something. If you need help, I'm here." I stared at the message. Going through something. There it was. The concern narrative. I replied carefully. "I'm fine." What did she say? 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. Then came, "Oh, nothing specific, just that she's worried about you." Worried. That word again. I felt something inside me snap into focus. She'd already started. The soft smear, not accusations, not yet, just seeds. That evening, my dad invited me back over for dinner. I almost declined, but part of me needed to see her again, to watch her, to measure how far she'd go. Dinner was normal. Too normal. She laughed at my dad's jokes. She asked me about work like she was genuinely interested. She refilled my glass before I could ask, and every time she smiled at me, I felt the weight behind it. At one point, my dad stepped away to check something in the garage. She didn't waste a second. She leaned toward me across the table. "You had time to think?" she asked quietly. "I'm not giving you access," I replied just as quietly. Her eyes hardened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said. "You are." She clicked her tongue softly. "You think he'll believe you?" she asked. That one landed, because she wasn't talking about the credit card anymore. She was talking about the future. "You've always been dramatic," she continued, voice barely above a whisper. "Emotional, impulsive." My jaw tightened. "You've told him that," I said. She didn't deny it. "I've protected him from your chaos," she replied smoothly. Chaos. I had a stable job, paid my bills, stayed out of trouble. But in her version of me, I was unstable enough to be dismissed. "You're laying groundwork," I said. She smiled slightly. "I'm preparing," she corrected. "For what?" "For when you force my hand." My chest tightened. "And what exactly is your hand?" I asked. She leaned back in her chair, expression cool. "You don't want to find out." My dad came back in then, and the mask slid back into place so smoothly it was almost impressive. After dinner, I sat in my car in their driveway for 10 minutes before driving home. I needed air. I needed distance. Because something else had been bothering me. Something small at first. The way she'd been guarding her phone lately. The sudden girls' nights. The work dinners that ran late. The notifications that popped up on her smartwatch at odd hours. At first I'd dismissed it. Not my marriage, not my business. But now, everything felt connected. If she needed money badly enough to blackmail me, why? My dad wasn't broke. He wasn't rich either, but he wasn't desperate. Unless there was something I didn't know. 2 days later, the answer literally pinged into my lap. I was at their house again, this time helping my dad install a new router. He'd asked me because, "You're better with this stuff." She was upstairs getting ready for something. As I connected the new router, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Normally, I wouldn't look, but it lit up in full view, a preview notification, a name I didn't recognize. "Miss you already. Last night was insane." My stomach dropped. Another buzz. "Can't wait to see you Friday. Don't tell him yet." My hand froze over the router. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't open it. I just stared at the screen as the notification faded. Then I heard her footsteps on the stairs. Fast. She must have seen the notification from upstairs on another device. She walked into the kitchen too quickly, too casually. "Everything okay?" she asked, eyes flicking to the counter. "Fine," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She grabbed the phone immediately, flipping it face down. For a split second, something flashed in her expression. Not guilt, fear, and then it was gone. "You know," she said lightly, "you've been tense lately." I almost laughed. I went home that night with my pulse still humming. I told myself not to get involved, not my marriage, not my business. But then her words replayed. "Give me access, or I'll ruin you." Blackmail, smear campaigns, desperation for money. And now, affair texts. The next step wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. I checked something I shouldn't have had access to anymore. An old shared family iPad my dad had given me years ago to fix and never fully disconnected from their Apple ID. I powered it on. It synced automatically. Messages populated. My hands trembled. There they were, weeks of texts, photos, plans, hotel receipts sent as screenshots, jokes about my dad, comments about milking the stability. I sat there in the dim light of my living room, staring at her words, feeling something crack open inside me. She wasn't just cheating. She was leveraging him, using him, and now trying to leverage me too. The blackmail wasn't about money alone. It was about control. If I gave her access to my card, I became complicit, dependent, silenced, and if I refused, she'd burn my name down first. I stared at the screenshots. Then I started saving them, one by one. Dates, times, entire threads. I backed them up in 3 places: encrypted, cloud, external drive. Because now this wasn't about reacting. It was about timing. She thought she had leverage. She didn't realize she'd left her own fingerprints everywhere. And for the first time since she whispered that threat, I felt something different than fear. I felt prepared. I didn't confront her immediately. That was the hardest part. Sitting on something explosive and pretending nothing was wrong. For 3 days, I watched her perform. She posted a photo of her and my dad at dinner with the caption, "Grateful for stability." She texted the family group chat about planning a summer barbecue. She even sent me a private message. "Stepmom, we should clear the air soon. I don't want tension. Clear the air." I almost laughed. The air was gasoline. I was just waiting for the right spark. The moment came unexpectedly. My dad called me on a Thursday night. "Can you come over?" he asked. "I need help with something in the garage." His voice sounded off. Tired, more tired than usual. I went. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked normal. Lights on, TV flickering in the living room. She opened the door. "Hi," she said sweetly, stepping aside to let me in. My dad was in the garage, staring at an old toolbox like it held secrets. He looked up when I walked in. "Hey," he said, attempting a smile. My stepmom lingered near the doorway. "You two talk," she said lightly. "I have a call." She disappeared inside. My dad waited until he heard the back door shut. Then he exhaled. "She says you've been distant," he said carefully. There it was, the groundwork. "She told me you've been stressed, that maybe you're not handling things well." My chest tightened. "What things?" I asked. He hesitated. "She implied you might be in some financial trouble," he said, "and that you've been defensive." There it was. Debt narrative, instability narrative, concern narrative, all packaged neatly. I looked at my dad, and something inside me made a decision. This was it, the battlefield. "Did she tell you she asked for access to my credit card?" I asked. He blinked. "What?" "She cornered me in the kitchen," I said. "Whispered that if I didn't give her access, she'd ruin my reputation." His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "That doesn't sound like her," he said automatically. "Of course it didn't. It never does." "She also told people I'm struggling," I continued calmly. "That I'm unstable. That I might have debt." He frowned. "She's worried about you?" "No," I said. "She's preparing." "For what?" he asked. I held his gaze. "For leverage." He shook his head slowly. "You're reading too much into this." There it was, the reflex. Defend harmony, dismiss friction. I reached into my bag. My hands were steady now. "I didn't want to do this," I said quietly, "but I won't be blackmailed." I handed him my phone. He looked down. "What is this?" "Read." He took the phone. The first screenshot was the threat text she'd sent 2 days after the whisper. "You'll regret not cooperating." Then another. "Don't force me to protect this family from you." His brow furrowed. "That's vague," he said. "Keep scrolling." He did. The messages shifted. Different contact name, different tone, photos, hotel confirmations. Last night was worth every lie. My dad's hand froze. His face went pale. He scrolled again and again. The garage felt very small. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. He read silently for what felt like 10 minutes, but was probably 2. His breathing changed first, shallow, then uneven. "This isn't real," he said softly. "It is." "She wouldn't." He scrolled further. There were timestamps, photos of her in a hotel bathroom mirror, messages mocking small-town husbands, a comment about making sure the finances stay secure. He lowered the phone slowly. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "It synced to the old iPad you gave me years ago," I said. "She never disconnected it." He stared at the concrete floor. For a second, he looked smaller, not angry, not loud, just broken. "I didn't want to show you," I said quietly. "But she tried to blackmail me, and she's already building a narrative about me." He didn't respond. He just kept staring at the phone. The back door creaked open. Her voice floated in. "Everything okay?" My dad didn't answer. She stepped into the garage. Her eyes flicked between us, then to the phone in his hand. Something in her posture changed instantly. "What's going on?" she asked carefully. My dad lifted his head slowly. "Who is Mark?" he asked. Silence, just for a split second. Then her face rearranged itself. "Excuse me?" He held up the phone. "Who is Mark?" She looked at me. Not confused, not surprised, calculating. "You went through my messages?" she asked, voice rising. "You blackmailed her," my dad said hoarsely. She scoffed. "This is unbelievable," she snapped. "She's manipulating you." "Am I?" I asked calmly. She ignored me. "You've always been jealous," she told me. "You hate that I stabilized this family." "By cheating?" my dad asked quietly. She froze. "I was lonely," she said quickly. "You've been distant. You've been stressed. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," he said. "And now she's trying to use it," she shot back, pointing at me. She wants to break us apart." I wanted her to stop threatening me, I said evenly. "What threats?" she demanded. I stepped closer. "You told me you'd ruin my reputation if I didn't give you access to my credit card." She laughed. "That's insane." I pulled up the screenshots again. She saw them. And for the first time since this started, her confidence flickered. "You twisted context," she said weakly. "There is no context," I replied. "It's a threat." My dad looked between us. "You asked her for access?" he asked slowly. "She's exaggerating," she snapped. "I was joking." "You don't whisper jokes," I said. Silence. The air in the garage felt electric. My dad exhaled shakily. "Get out," he said to her. She stared at him. "What?" "Get out of this garage," he repeated. "I need a minute." She stood there for a second longer, like she was trying to decide whether to push harder. Then she turned sharply and walked back into the house. The door slammed. My dad sat down heavily on a stool. He rubbed his face with both hands. "I'm so stupid," he muttered. "No," I said softly. He looked up at me. "You tried to tell me," he said. "I tried to protect myself," I corrected. He nodded slowly. The illusion had shattered, and there was no way to glue it back together without seeing the cracks. For the first time in years, she didn't have control of the narrative. She had exposure. And exposure burns. The house felt different after that night. Not loud, not chaotic, just hollow. My dad didn't scream. He didn't throw things. He didn't chase her down the driveway. That almost would have been easier to process. Instead, he became very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when someone is rearranging their entire understanding of reality. She tried to recover fast. The next morning, she sent a long message in the family group chat. "There are lies being spread about me. I won't tolerate attempts to sabotage this marriage." No names, but the implication was clear. Within an hour, I had 3 texts from relatives asking what was going on. The smear had accelerated, but this time something was different. My dad didn't defend her. He didn't jump in to calm things. He didn't ask me to be the bigger person. Instead, he called me. "I'm meeting with a lawyer," he said. Just that. No dramatics, no qualifiers. The weight of that sentence sat heavy in my chest. "Are you sure?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "She didn't just cheat," he said. "She tried to turn you into a liability." That part mattered to him, maybe more than the affair, because he could forgive loneliness. He could maybe forgive a mistake. But manipulation of his child? That cut differently. Over the next week, the unraveling was quiet but steady. Separate bank accounts, passwords changed, a request for her to move out temporarily. She didn't go quietly. Of course she didn't. She cried. She begged. She accused. She told my dad I had always wanted this. She even tried to flip it into martyrdom. "I was trying to protect our finances," she insisted one night when I happened to be there. "By blackmailing my daughter?" my dad asked calmly. Silence. She pivoted. "You're choosing her over me." "No," he said. "I'm choosing reality." That was the turning point. Not the screenshots, not the confrontation. Reality. Once someone sees the pattern, they can't unsee it. She tried one last angle with me. She cornered me in the driveway as I was leaving one evening. "You could still fix this," she said urgently. "How?" I asked. "Tell him you misunderstood," she replied. "Tell him you overreacted." "And in exchange?" I asked evenly. Her jaw tightened. "I'll let this go," she said. "Let this go," as if she were the one granting mercy. "No," I said. She stared at me. "You're destroying your father's happiness." "No," I replied calmly. "You did that." She looked at me like she wanted to say something cruel, something surgical. Instead, she just shook her head. "You think you won," she muttered. I almost laughed. This was never about winning. It was about survival. Within a month, she moved out. Not dramatically, not escorted. Just gone. But the absence was loud. My dad and I sat at his kitchen table one evening in silence. The same kitchen where she had whispered that threat. He stared at his hands. "I should have seen it," he said quietly. "You trusted her," I replied. He nodded. "I didn't want conflict." "I know." He looked at me then, eyes tired but clear. I won't ask you to be in the same room with her again. That mattered. Because no contact isn't just about blocking someone. It's about being backed when you set the boundary. She tried for a while after that. Emails, voicemails, vague social media posts about betrayal and false accusations. But without my dad amplifying her narrative, it lost oxygen. I blocked her everywhere. Phone, email, social media. I told relatives I wouldn't discuss her. And when someone tried to mediate, I said one sentence. She tried to blackmail me. That was enough. Over time, the noise faded. My reputation didn't crumble. My job didn't call me in. No one whispered at church, because lies need repetition. And she no longer had the stage. Sometimes I think about that moment in the kitchen, how close I came to staying quiet, to handing over my card just to avoid escalation. And I realize something that makes my stomach twist. Blackmail only works if you're more afraid of exposure than you are of losing the relationship. I chose exposure. And what I exposed wasn't me, it was her. I lost a stepmother. My dad lost a marriage. But what we gained was clarity. And clarity is brutal. It strips illusions down to bone. She whispered that she'd ruin my reputation. What she ruined instead was her own. Permanently. Here's what happened. I didn't hand over my card. I handed my dad the evidence. The marriage didn't explode. It collapsed. Quietly. Permanently. She tried to weaponize my reputation. Instead, she exposed her own. No contact wasn't emotional. It was structural. Because once someone threatens you in a whisper, you don't argue. You turn on the lights, and you let the truth do the damage.